Bazball under the microscope again. Is it running its course? And the parallels with the test match that has just been completed, number 3 of 5 in this Indian series, and the Lord's Test last year. Some really dumb cricket took over that England team. A huge loss, 434 runs. So first and foremost, can you draw the parallel between the two? And is it because of the approach, or is it just a game of cricket and some bad decisions were made in that particular game of cricket?
Well, I think you can draw comparisons between the Lord's Test of 2023 and the Rajkot Test of 2024. England had given up, a decent first innings score. They were batting second. And at the stage of the game where it all went horribly wrong, wasn't that long after the opposition's prime off spinner had to leave the game. Nathan Lyon at Lord's did his calf or Achilles, I can't quite remember. Either way, he was out for the series. And fast forward to Rajkot in 2024, and it was Ravichandran Ashwin who had to depart because of a family emergency. So how can you not compare the two? Because on both occasions, England were in a very, very good position with the bat. There was still a lot of work to do, and it wasn't a given that they would go on to win the game, if not for an out of a shot that was, unnecessary at that time. At Lord's, it was Ollie Pope hooking to deep square leg and getting caught on the boundary that sparked the collapse. And at Rajkot, it was Joe Root attempting to reverse scoop Jasprit Bumrah over second slip, and he got caught. So, yeah, without doubt, there's comparisons, because when Joe Root departed, England collapsed. The same thing happened at Lord's. Lord's, England lost, went 2-0 down in a 5-match series. At Rajkot, they lost. They would have gone 2-1 down in a 5-match series. There's definitely comparisons to be made. The difference, I would say, between the two is that I don't think that there was much that England needed to do to essentially tinker, change, or just adapt against the Australians. The Indians, this is a far sterner challenge, so it's not going to be quite as straightforward. But yeah, they didn't play to the script in that Lord's defeat. They didn't play to the script in this defeat. But they would also turn around and argue, and I would say they've got a point to a point, that it is by thinking outside the box and by doing things differently and by putting pressure on the opponents that has got them to this stage. And to criticise, 1 wicket out of 20 as a reason for a defeat would be unfair. And they'd also point to the fact that, at the end of the day, Joe Root is averaging more under Brendon McCullum than he ever did before. The results have been decent, although they haven't won a series for a year and a bit. So, look, I can see both sides of the argument. But yeah, I would definitely say that it would be fair to make a comparison between the two test matches.
talkSPORT's cricket editor is Jon Norman, great mate of the show, who's with us to talk about not only India versus England, we're going to talk about Kane Williamson and also the upcoming New Zealand versus Australia series. Brendon McCullum's comments afterwards, though, saying, look, we won't stop. It'd be too disruptive to change the approach now. That's really worrying for me. As a coach, you've got to be malleable. You've got to bend. You've got to twist. You've got to move as circumstances dictate. Is that just, too hardball from him? Whereas in actual fact, perhaps it's just about better decision-making, isn't it? We're not saying don't, go for the win, because it's actually been remarkable what it's done for Test cricket. And I think every nation's picked up on it. But you've still got to be sensible about this.
Yeah, and you wouldn't expect Brendon McCullum to say anything else, would you? I think some of the statements to the press have been, and this is always the way in sport. What the guys are saying to the press is more a message to the dressing room than it is to the press themselves. So we can get caught up in the ins and outs of exactly what Ben Duckett said after day 3, when England had thrown away that lead. Or thrown away a decent position. He came out and said that he actually wanted to chase more than 500 or something rather than 300, because England are about breaking records. And, that Ben Stokes was disappointed because he wanted to be out in the field earlier Essentially he's saying he wanted England to have been bowled out earlier. This is all complete and utter nonsense, right? We know that. They're having a bit of fun. They've often said that they don't care what anybody thinks. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, right. Well, that's all fine. But what I do not understand is that in Ben Stokes, you have a guy that doesn't go Bazball from the start. He very often sets his stall out to defend, to assess the situation, and then click through the gears if needed. With ball in hand, they're not all about Bazball. It's just regulation cricket. I would say Stokes is a terrific captain in the field, by the way. He marshals his bowlers brilliantly. He's always got an idea. He rotates and, gives confidence and is phenomenal. But with bat in hand, if you look at that Joe Root dismissal just in isolation, the simple fact is that Joe Root did not need to do that shot, right? It was 20 minutes into the day. Ben Duckett wasn't freeing his arms and wasn't looking as fluent as he had done the night before. Ravichandran Ashwin was out the attack. Mohammad Siraj, or rather Ravindra Jadeja, had a hamstring problem. And this is where it kind of falls down a little bit, because it's common sense and it's intelligence to just suggest, just milk the bowlers, get them into their third and fourth spells, take time out of the game, and just make sure you're batting by the end of the day. It's not like he needed to move the field around. It's not like he was being put under pressure by Bumrah. So that for me is really what it's about. I know that you can point to that shot, and as Joe Root did, because remember this time last year he was out in exactly the same way to Neil Wagner, and he was talked about it, and he said, "Look, I averaged 70 with that shot. I've only ever been out to it twice now." He didn't say that, but if he was to be asked, you look at the stats, he's been out to that shot twice. It actually is a shot that makes a lot of sense, but it's also a premeditated shot. It's not that he was assessing the delivery and then thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to reverse sweep this shot." You've got to decide before the ball has left the bowler's hand. And of course, Joe Root knows pretty much where the ball is going to go, but at the end of the day, it didn't work, and that's where it kind of doesn't kind of make sense to me. The shot wasn't needed then, and he played it anyway. So will he play it again next time? Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
It's the risk versus reward thing, isn't it? And I suppose if England get out of this with a draw, well, another tick in Bazball's favour. But if not, eventually it's going to run its course. When is that?
Well, I don't know the answers to that. I mean, if all goes well, it ends with Ben Stokes and Brendon McCullum winning the Ashes in Australia at the end of next year. I can't really see them going on much after that. Certainly not McCullum. That's for me. I mean, once they've done that, then there's not too much else to do. Then the cycle starts all over again. That's a good year and a half away. England have won in Australia once since 1986-87. They managed to do it, well then, they walk away with their heads held high. They're legends, whatever happens in India. So, that's the dream. And this summer coming up, they do well to lose at home against West Indies and against Sri Lanka. They've already absolutely obliterated Pakistan. That's where they go in October. We'll see where we are with New Zealand in December. But, that's the challenge. India are back in England next year. So look, there's plenty of cricket to be played, and if they want to stick around, there's plenty of challenges. And as I say, Ashes at the end of next year will probably be the end of it. So yeah, that's the end game. But similarly, sport is a results business, and England didn't beat Australia, they didn't beat New Zealand, and they probably won't beat India as well. So it's all well and good, and I've enjoyed Bazball as much as anybody. But you do need to start winning games and series, and you also need to be in a position where it is okay to win, right? It's almost like this England team are kind of in a position where they're like, it's all about entertainment and it's all about showing we could win without actually winning. It's a very bizarre time to be alive, to be honest.
Finally, Kane Williamson, the big four, Steve Smith, Kohli, himself, and Joe Root. 7 centuries in 7 tests now. Is this guy the best in the world right now holding a cricket bat?
I'll tell you in 3 weeks' time.
After Australia, of course. That's the test, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I've loved watching Kane Williamson for many, many years. He is undeniably a class act as a human being, as a captain, and as a batter across all 3 formats. He's come so close to winning a World Cup. He has, of course, won the World Test Championship. He's won a lot of games of cricket and he's won a lot of hearts. But his record against Australia is not brilliant. And, just like England, that's kind of what matters amongst everything else. Joe Root's never scored a century in Australia. Do you know that? Kane Williamson has, but he's only scored 1 Test century in England, and he's only scored 2 Test centuries in Australia. All 3 were the best part of a decade ago. And he's played, 4 Test series against Australia? I mean, he should have played more. It's a bit of a scandal that he hasn't. But I wouldn't say that he's performed to his levels in 3 of them. And against England, I don't think he's performed to his levels in any of those series either. Maybe bar 1, 2015 possibly. So whilst that is the case, that'll always be there. So yeah, if he scores a century and wins a Test match for New Zealand at the Basin, and then scores a century and saves a Test match at Christchurch and corrects that wrong and wins a series for New Zealand and puts him in a very, very good position in the World Test Championship, then yeah, we can be talking about the best batter in the world right now. But yeah. Yeah. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure. I've probably answered a different question, but there you go.